And thank you for staying with us on Citizen TV. You're watching Citizen Extra. I am Anne Kiguta. We're keeping track of all the political happenings for you at this hour. I want to introduce guest Daniel Manzo, the Makueni MP on a Wiper ticket. Ayub Savula stays with us. He's the Lugari MP. Well, I shouldn't say on a Wiper ticket. He's of the Wiper party. That's what you are right now. We don't know whether you'll be on the ticket. I know you're gunning for it, Manzo. Ayub Savula of ANC. Sandra Ochola is a political analyst who joins us this hour. And we're staying, of course, also with Dr. Sam Kamau. And good morning to you. Also, Musalia Mudavadi's name very conspicuously missing from a report that was leaked to the media last week that named Raila Odinga and Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka as the #1 and 2 for a possible NASA ticket. The question this morning being, has Mudavadi been betrayed a second time, or is this a kind of betrayal of his own making? Let me begin with you, Dr. Kamau, because in the instances leading up to this report 2 weeks ago, I hosted Musalia Mudavadi on this program and asked him why he wasn't upping the ante in as far as, really showing interest to be the presidential flag bearer for NASA. And his response simply was that, he's a gentleman. He doesn't need to state and restate his position and his interests over and over, that it was clear to all and sundry that he was serious about this position. Do you think he was playing a gentleman's game in what was a bare-knuckled wrestling match, and that this has been his own undoing?
Well, thank you, Anne. I think what we are witnessing right now is an unfolding issue. 2 weeks ago, we were talking about Kalonzo. Now the focus has shifted on Mudavadi. But I think, as we know, and as they say that kila Mwambagoma uvuta kwake, I think it is part of the politics and everybody trying to show that I am the best candidate. It's upping the stakes, like you said. Maybe those who play nice are likely to lose out. But I think as we look at it now, it's still an unfolding issue. The matter has not been concluded. We realized yesterday that the leaking of that list was actually part of a strategic move by some people, maybe within ODM. But I think the unease that we have seen that is happening, we are still waiting for the final verdict to be released, and I'm sure the principals are still talking to one another. But as for whether this is a betrayal for the second time, maybe because those who approach politics with naivety and with good faith do not understand always the issues that are happening beneath the scenes. But I think based on what happened and the demonstrations that we saw in the western part of the region, the only thing that is dangerous, and if this was to be true, is creating the impression on the ground. If the Luya nation feels that we are getting shortchanged in the process, even if that lineup was true and was to be used, you would expect some level of apathy. So I think the current talk is definitely not helping any party, and maybe that is why the former Prime Minister yesterday appeared to snap when he was pressed by journalists on this particular issue. It's a thorny issue, it's a sticky issue that we'll continue discussing. But as of now, we can't say that that will be the lineup. It's only that there are discussions around that, but most likely that might be the lineup.
Savula, how do you at ANC feel about this? Do you feel that this is the end of the road? Are you taking this list as final? And might you concede that in terms of political strategy, perhaps the party should have been making more noise about this a little earlier, when we saw Kalonzo really raise, the stakes for this position, that we should have been hearing from ANC then?
And let me tell you, there's just a lot of anxiety for no reason. Musalia Mudavadi is my party leader, I'm his deputy. Musalia is not climbing a mountain to get an NASA ticket. What is just happening is just an ant-hill in between Musalia and the NASA presidential nomination ticket. We are privy to information, formal information, that the committee that was given the mandate to bring proposals on the table on how to achieve or how to get to the presidential candidate came up with 12 options. And only one of those options was leaked to the media. But the other 11 options are still there. The committee has no mandate to endorse a presidential candidate among the 4 principals. The 4 principals will sit soon in a retreat from 17th and look at the 12 options and come up with a resolution on one of them. The one that was leaked was Raila should be the presidential candidate, Kalonzo his deputy, and Musalia chief minister stroke the prime minister. But there's another option. Musalia presidential candidate, Kalonzo running mate, and Raila the prime minister. The main options, the main 5 options that are contained in that report, they revolve around these 2 guys, Musalia and Kalonzo, being powered by Raila, because they cannot win on their own without the power of Raila. They have to be powered by Raila. Those are the things that will be discussed in the retreat among the 4 principals, and they will agree.
But Savala, just even listen to what you're saying, that those options are dependent on these 2 being powered by Raila. So if Raila is the power in this political game, then really are you being realistic by expecting that your party leader will be the presidential flag bearer?
You know, a kingmaker will never be a king himself. He has to make a king.
Is that all you see Raila
That is the principle.
as?
That is the principle. A kingmaker will never be a king himself. He has to make a king. That is what happens in politics.
And so that is who Raila Odinga is.
Raila Odinga can make Musalia or can make Kalonzo.
But he cannot make himself.
But he cannot make himself. That's the principle in politics. Raila made Mwai Kibaki. Raila is a power. Raila is a force. Musalia cannot win minus Raila. Kalonzo cannot win minus Raila. Raila is a force. But Raila himself cannot win because of the fear from certain quarters. And Kibuta, you understand very well the politics of this country. If Musalia is a presidential candidate on the table, there will be voter apathy in Central Province. But if Raila is a presidential candidate, all members of the Kikuyu community will wake up and go and vote en masse, 99%, because of the fear of Raila. And really, we should hope that all Kenyans wake up and vote, not because of the fear of any personality, but just to exercise their democratic right. But nonetheless, it would be asked of ANC, what exactly is it that Musalia Mudavadi brings to the table? The Western region does not really appear to be a united and very enthusiastic vote bloc like Kalonzo has succeeded in portraying his side of the table as being. Look at the numbers. When Michael Kijana Wamalwa, was the running mate or the vice to Mwai Kibaki, Western bloc voted to the man because they knew they had a position there at stake in that government. When Musalia Mudavadi was running mate to Raila, we voted to the man because we knew we had a stake in that coalition arrangement. If we are given a half of the government, or if you are given Musalia as a presidential candidate, why can't we consolidate and show Kenyans that we have the power? Luhya community are #1 in the population in this country. Look at Nairobi, for example. Kidero cannot win as a governor in Nairobi minus the Luhya votes. We are a force. Look at constituencies like Rift Valley. Musalia was born in Baringo. He controls a huge chunk of votes in Baringo. Look at Nandi County. If Musalia is the presidential candidate today on the table, we will divide Rift Valley. If Musalia is the presidential candidate, Central will not wake up en masse to vote for Uhuru. There will be vote happen. Because they will see there is no difference. But if Raila is the presidential candidate...
When you politicians say these things, it's
I'm
so
telling you the truth. If Raila is the presidential candidate, the fear... The perceived fear. Those are facts we have put on the table. In fact, the committee, when it was analyzing those things, those are the things that are contained in this report. When the committee was analyzing, what is the option of Raila winning as an individual? What are the options of Musalia winning? What are the options of Kalonzo winning? And conclusively, if these two guys are not powered by Raila, because Raila controls the Coastal Bloc, Raila controls the Western Bloc, the Nyanza Bloc. But those other factors have to be considered when deciding who is the presidential candidate. And we have decided that all these political parties, ANC, Musalia should submit his documents to IEBC as a presidential candidate. Wetangula should also submit as a presidential candidate. Raila should also submit as ODM. And Kalonzo should also submit as Wiper. And the law says up to May 28th is when now you can formally say, this is our presidential candidate. That is the deadline that has been subscribed by the law. So we still have enough time. The leakage was just one of the 12
It was just one. Manzo, was this just one, leaked option. How are you taking it in Wiper? Are you comfortable with that option? Is that an option that Wiper Party is willing to back?
Well, you know, the Luhya Nation has spoken, and also the Kamba Nation has spoken earlier, that, you know, following previous arguments and following what is happening now that we are in NASA and Musalia Mudavadi, the NC leader, is now on board, then we need to look at an option whereby NASA captures power on August 8th. And one of the options now, which is really key, is that either Kalonzo ticket with the Mudavadi or Mudavadi Kalonzo ticket will definitely capture power in August 8th. And the moment this begins sinking into other blocks, the better, so that no one particular block or one particular party thinks it is more important than other parties, because it is clear that the Honorable Raila Odinga by himself, he will not become president. The Honorable Kalonzo by himself will not become president. And the Honorable Mudavadi by himself or Wetangula, none of them can survive by their own. And this is a fact all the four principles know. Therefore, unity is important, and we must have the best winning formula, for which now the Eastern people have spoken and the Western people have spoken.
Or at least politicians assume they have spoken. Sandra, let me come to you. Well, what does NASA lose if it loses Musalia?
Thank you, and of course, with Musalia out of the arrangement or the agreement, so to speak, NASA loses the Luhya vote. And because Musalia brings on board, or is estimated to bring on board, the Luhya vote, which, given previous estimations of his contribution within coalitions or within political environments before, he's managed to galvanize the Luhya vote. And what you're seeing in the media so far is a group that believes that Musalia is entitled, so to speak, to become the presidential candidate, or at least get something from that coalition, the NASA coalition, sorry.
And nationally?
Sorry?
And nationally, beyond his own backyard, does losing Musalia as a possible presidential flag bearer have an impact in terms of how other regions will vote?
I'd say yes, because given how we've organized ourselves politically, you have people voting as a bloc, and as much as we say that the Luhya community is not voting as a bloc, ideally you must have an individual who's seen as a leader so far, and now we have Musalia Mudavadi as a front person, the front runner as far as the Luhya politics is concerned. So losing him, of course, will ensure an environment where you have, if assuming it's Raila Kalonzo presidency, you have Raila Kalonzo and excluding the rest of the other communities. And so I believe even at the national level, it's important for Musalia to be involved, not only in the negotiations but also in the election process. You
will recall that before Kalonzo Musyoka was referred to as Watermelon, before that he was Mr. Clean, I believe, and it was believed then by pundits that Mr. Clean image was not as much a strength as he imagined it would be at that point in the political contest. Do you see a similarity then with the Mr. Clean image that Kalonzo used to have with what Musalia Mudavadi has been trying to portray in the last two major races as the gentleman? I keep my word, in a game that is frankly ugly and does not go by those rules.
I wouldn't go with the gentleman image, so to speak. I'd go with a bit more of the political calculations that each individual is making, because just like my colleagues have mentioned, they are well aware that if they go it alone, they might not be able to clinch the seat as they suppose. And so it goes back to sitting down and coming to an agreement on what is someone bringing on board, because garnering votes and reaching your political goal requires a good number of things. What are you bringing on the table as far as numbers is concerned? What are you bringing on the table as far as not necessarily votes, but as far as resources also is concerned, and also the regional balance aspect. So I want to believe that behind the scenes there's a lot of negotiations that are going on, and with all these factors that we are discussing this morning, those are things that are being considered to ensure that NASA puts forth an individual who's credible, an individual who has a national character, an individual who will bring the numbers and ensure that there's regional and gender balance as far as the August 8th election is concerned.
Savile, as I wind up with you, what would you say is brand Musalia then?
I'll call Musalia a sure bet for NASA to win. A sure bet for NASA to win. Because once you lose Musalia, you are opening up the Luhya community or the Western community to a political party called Jubilee. And definitely once you lose a huge chunk of the Luhya population to Jubilee, because of the bitterness the community will have in voting for NASA when Musalia is not the main man, then NASA will go nowhere. We need Musalia on the table as a presidential candidate, and if he's not up as a presidential candidate because it's a sure bet, then let's negotiate on how to share the government of NASA.
Manzo, if Musalia is the sure bet, what is Kalonzo?
Definitely, if Musalia was to become the presidential candidate, you know the deputy obviously cannot come from the Western Bloc, will have to come from Eastern. And that's one of the options, B+. But you also need to look at the seniority of their ages and the general charisma they command in the country. So it's one of the options, and also Kalonzo Musalia is another option. One clear indicator is that the Honorable Raila Odinga may have to forfeit his ambitions and support these two if NASA has to remain united. And I believe his people should not over-pressurize him, Kalonzo's people should not pressurize him, and the Honorable Mudavadi's people should not also over-pressurize him. And they should not also forget the factor that Wetangula, with his Ford
You're
Kenya
talking
party,
about no pressure, yet the greatest amount of pressure we've seen in this contest has been from yourselves in Wiper.
Yes,
so why are you denying others that equal political right, if you like?
Yes, we've done it because of the previous promises, but we are also saying we now need to stop all this pressure and give the principals a chance to sit down and look all the 12 options and give us the best option. I believe any one of those principles supported by the rest will still win the August 8th elections.
All right. Let's hold that thought there, and I thank you for your views, but I believe we want to cross over now very shortly rather to just look at Kenya's economic update. There is a World Bank report that was released this morning downgrading Kenya's economic standing, and very shortly we'll be speaking to Mumbi Waroi on it, but perhaps before we have her standing by, let me return just for final comment on this question of Musalia Mudavadi and whether he has been betrayed. Sandra, what would wisdom dictate for Musalia, who once saw the devil in the detail, if you like, in the instance with the now president in the last election? Going into this now, is there a way, if one was to assume that there was naivety on his part, that he was expecting, a gentleman's agreement and that all actors would be honest, etc., what should history dictate for him as he waits on those 12 options and a final, decision coming out of these NASA principles? For Musalia Mudavadi, I'd say history should dictate to him that a closed mouth doesn't get fed. And if indeed a closed mouth doesn't get fed.
A closed mouth
that's
doesn't
a good one.
Yes, and if indeed he's serious about the presidential ticket, then he should come out strongly. And at the start, you highlighted this very well, that he hasn't shown enough impetus, or the impetus that we'd expect for someone who's garnering for a presidential ticket. And if indeed he's serious about it, then that should be seen in how he acts. That should be seen in how he conducts his activities and how he galvanizes his supporters. But that being said as well, in the event that he might not be overtly interested in being the presidential candidate, then he must negotiate within NASA a package that will ensure his relevance moving forward in the next 5 years, or something that will ensure that he still has his support base, and that his supporters are adequately catered for within that agreement.
Sabula, advice you'll be taking this morning? Open mouth?
And I'll tell you, from history, since this country attained independence, Kenyans have always elected non-threatening leaders. I mean, when the founding father, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, was supposed to take over the leadership of this country, but he said, let me leave it to Jomo Kenyatta. After that, the vice president, Mwai Kibaki, who was underrated. He's an underdog. There's nothing he'll do. They tried to change the constitution to bar him from becoming the president of this country. But eventually, he was a non-threatening leader. Eventually, he became the president, and he ruled this country for 24 years. After President Moi, the Kikuyu community referred to Mwai Kibaki as General Kigwea. You know what it means. I don't know what it means.
Then why are you citing it?
I understand, but I don't know the deeper meaning.
Please talk about what you know.
I don't know the deeper meaning, but I think it's an non-threatening. One who cannot bite, General Kigwea. But Kibaki became the president of the Republic of Kenya and ruled for how many years? For another 10 years. We underrated Uhuru after he lost the last general election. In the previous election when Kibaki was in power, we said this is an ICC suspect, but he was non-threatening. Raila Odinga was the Prime Minister of the Republic of Kenya. Kalonzo Musyoka was the Vice President. But in their campaign strategy, they were using a message, these are ICC suspects, and these are other guys who are cool, non-threatening. They became the president. The next president of this country, who is a non-threatening leader, is cool man called Shuabet Musalia Mudavadi. Thank you.
Wow, you've really earned your place in that party. Dr. Kamara, if you have some advice for Sabula to take home, if you like?
Well, I've heard him say that there are about 12 options. But I think if you look at it, there are only two positions really that matter and one can talk about before the elections. That is the president and his deputy. And I think the calculations have to stick to that. When you talk about the speaker position, the chief minister, that is something you cannot guarantee before the elections. Now, if you look at it and all the mathematics that go into this, I think we know, looking at the character and the profile of all the NASA principles, I think the most significant person we have to look at in the heart of that equation is Kalonzo Musyoka. Every equation has to revolve around him. And looking now at the other three and whatever position they are likely to take, I know maybe Sabula is trying to overhype the candidature of Musalia, but we know that Raila was able to secure a significant portion of the Western vote without Musalia. And I think they have looked at that and discovered the only way to make sure that NASA stands a chance of winning the election is to have a formula that includes Kalonzo Musyoka and Raila, who is able to galvanize support nationally or in most of the regions in this country. So my advice to them is that they continue negotiating. They still have to agree. Somebody will have to sacrifice their ambition in the end, because there are only two positions that are worth talking about now. It's only after the election that we can talk about the other positions. All
right. And I thank you all for your views on that this morning. We want to switch gears now to a look at the business, and the World Bank has downgraded Kenya's 2017 economic prospects from a previous 6.6% to 5%. The institution says this is as a result of a number of economic headwinds. We're now joined live by our business reporter Mumbi Waroi, who's following the release of that report. Mumbi, tell us more.
Thank you very much, Kiguta. We are coming to you live from the Intercontinental Hotel, where the World Bank has just released the Kenya Economic Update of 2017 with a key focus on housing. One of the key issues that have really come out today is that the World Bank has downgraded their focus from 6% for 2017 to 5.5%. This at a time when Kenya is really optimistic, or rather, the government has been really optimistic that the country will be able to have a continued growth over time. But right now, with the World Bank saying that because of the tough economic times that the country is currently facing, where we have seen the ongoing drought situation, the slowing down of credit facilities, where due to the capping of interest rates, there is minimal lending when it comes to the banks, and also among other issues that have affected the economy. But all hope is not lost, because when it comes to an issue of infrastructure, the government has said that during 2017 they are going to focus majorly on infrastructure so as to enable the continued growth of the economy, because since 2013 we have seen Kenya be able to have a standard growth of 5.6%, and it was expected, the government's projection says that the economy is to grow at between 5.9 to 6% this year. But however, as you've heard, the World Bank report indicates that this will be slowed down. But also another key issue that we can actually comment on is the issue that the elections are coming up, and an election is a key factor. And just someone who is going to shed more light into this, and we're just going to have a brief interview with one of the economists of the World Bank. Kindly join me, sir. That is Mr. Alan Dennis. Yes. I'd like to start by asking you, why did you predict that the growth will be downwards to 5.5%?
Okay. First of all, let me say that Kenya is growing robustly. It grew robustly in 2016, and even though we've marked down Kenya's growth performance in 2017 to 5.5%, relative to what is happening across sub-Saharan Africa, Kenya will still be growing quite robustly. Now, specific to why we marked down the growth, we're seeing certain emerging headwinds that are affecting Kenya's growth performance. The first one, of course, is what we all experiencing, which is the drought. Kenya is a predominantly agricultural economy with 25% or so of its GDP coming from the agricultural sector. So when you have a drought, and historically you do see a deceleration in growth performance. The second thing is what we see in terms of the slowdown in credit growth. Credit needs to move to the private sector, because the private sector is what drives economies. When you see credit growth at 4.3% and you have a historical average of around 19%, that obviously is a concern.
Mr. Dennis, if I'm to ask you, it is an election year, and already during the first quarter you are saying that these indications show that there is going to be a downwards. That's why you revised your projections, yet there is elections coming forward. Do you actually see that this 5.5 you might actually even go down?
There are always risks to forecast, and I have to say, as much as there are downside risks, there are also upside risks. There are reasons why it could be higher than 5.5%, and there are reasons why it could be lower than 5.5%. For example, we talk about the drought. We factor that in our baseline, and that's why we have 5.5. But what if even the drought is worse than what we think it is? That will take you to something that is even below 5.5%. What if the slowdown in credit is much worse than what we think it is? That would lead. On the upside too, there are reasons why. What if the drought, turns out to be not as bad as is currently being predicted by the Kenya Meteorological Service? Then that's an upside risk to Kenya. We also mentioned some upside risks in terms of the growth in the global economy. For the first time in about 4 or 5 years, we're seeing an actually strengthening of the global. That's good for Kenya, because it's good for tourism in Kenya, and it's good for Kenya's exports. So there are downside and there are upside risks. But at this point, in terms of the balance of risk, we have 5.5% for 2017.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dennis. And yes, Ann Kiguta, we are going to bring you more details of this in our subsequent bulletins. Back to you in studio.
Thanks very much, Mom. Before that, let's just get comment from our guests in studio. And let me begin with you, Manzo, to the extent that we've had the opposition really drumming the issue of the country's economic performance and blaming it on other factors, corruption, heavy borrowing, etc. Having heard what you've heard from the World Bank this morning, what are your thoughts?
Yes, first of all, Kenya needs to invest in certain strategic things. The president had promised irrigated agriculture, which should be the way in the future. Now Kenya is going through a drought, and the water levels are really low. So in future, we really need to make sure our water does not go back to Indian Ocean. There was Thwake Athi Dam, which currently is very controversial, and the minister is having a meeting tomorrow with the stakeholders for way forward. Thwake Dam is what will stabilize the irrigation scheme of Gulalu, Galana, and also the Konza City, which will increase economic activity into the country. We have a lot of resources in terms of minerals. We have unexploited coal. We have unexploited oil. So if we exploit our oil right now, we'll be able to get about 40 trillion Kenyan shillings, and this makes it easy for the country. And we need also to invest in security. In security, because of our borders has caused us a lot of loss of revenue in terms of foreign exchange and tourists visiting the country. So we need to boost that, and those could have been some of the factors. You remember the Westgate saga and many other activities of terrorism in the country, which in the last few years has scared people visiting our country, especially tourists. So we need to create that confidence so that people outside there can know that Kenya is still a great country. Of course, we have a big future, and part of the things we could do is to change the political scenario if we find the current one is unbearable or the current leadership is unable to control corruption. We know the president has made an effort, but some of his people have really let him down. The systems are really collapsing. We changed ESCC. We have a good chairman, but what is happening in the secretariat? We need to finance it sufficiently. We need to devolve ESCC so that we can tackle corruption in the counties, because it's one of the areas we have a problem with.
Sandra, your thoughts on that downgrading? Sorry? Your thoughts on that downgrading by the World Bank?
I think as a country we've made good progress as far as infrastructure is concerned, and also for the government in terms of opening up more opportunities where citizens can get information and liaise with the government on issues development for that on that front. However, the problem arises where this kind of development is not being felt by the common citizen. We have instances where we have high inflation rates, the wage bill is quite high, and everyone is complaining about taxes. So despite or in spite of the achievements that we've made, I think it's important moving forward that the government or the incoming government should find a way, so to speak, of ensuring that all these benefits are felt at the common level, so that as much as we are building roads, we are having railways, the common man is able to benefit from these initiatives, and the tax burden is reduced and the wage bill is also reduced at the same time.
And thank you for your thoughts on these topics in this first half of our second hour. We're going to take a short break, but when we return, we're talking about the state of the Kenyan child as we take a more social look at issues this morning. I'm going to be joined by the UNICEF Kenya Country Director. Very shortly we'll be speaking. Stay with us.